Let's dive right into the state of the nation in the 2023 race that will shape the nation long after. With the Republican-leaning voters looking very ready to dump Trump this time around, at least based on these recent Suffolk University USA Today findings. Then again, we all remember how all that 2016 polling turned out. So joining me to weigh in on this and plenty more, Michael Curry, President and CEO of the Massachusetts League of Community Health Centers. He's also a member of the National NAACP Board of Directors, where he chairs their Advocacy and Policy Committee. Jesse Mermell is founder and president of deWit Impact Group. Steve Kerrigan, former CEO of the Democratic National Convention. Gentlemen and ladies, it's great to see all three of you. Starting with you, Jesse, as Trump's grasp lessens, assuming that is, does polarization lessen? Do threats of violence go down? Does the hate quotient go down? Or is Trumpism so baked in that it doesn't matter if he's part of it or not?
Unfortunately, Trumpism is so baked in, and beyond that is being carried. His hateful, dangerous water is being carried by countless other politicians, including Ron DeSantis, who might put a slightly more palatable package on it. But make no mistake, he is just as dangerous, perhaps more so because he presents in a slightly more easy to swallow way.
Well, the press is painting him as a moderate because he's not Donald Trump, and he's far from a moderate. Is it baked in, Michael Curry?
It's baked in. I think it started before Trump, but I think the trajectory of this is not one we're going to turn back. I think Republicans have learned that they win with being extreme in their views and their policies.
But they didn't win in the midterms.
It didn't win in the midterms. But when you think about the wins they did have in the last several years, they've won. Supreme Court decisions. There's a series of Supreme Court decisions. I think that, quite frankly, now they just need to figure out how to detach themselves from Trumpism, but they'll still go down this dark road, I think.
Are you going to make it unanimous?
I don't think so. I think I'm going to get close. I do think it's baked in, and I agree with Michael that it was baked in long before Donald Trump. He gave voice to a lot of anger and hate out there, and he was willing to change that voice to say whatever that person said in front of him. But what you saw with those numbers is 33% of people support Trump in the Republican poll. If you look back at the people he supported in the primaries this past year, roughly his candidates got 33%. So if he holds on to that number in a crowded Republican field for president, he could be their nominee again.
Well, it's because sane Republicans are leaving the party, and what's left are the Trumpsters, right?
But they'll get out and vote.
Okay.
They'll get out and vote.
You know, Monday night, a couple of fairly decent lawyers, Larry Tribe and former federal judge Nancy Gertner, were here, and here's what they had to say on one particular topic.
The indictment is likely, at least the indictments related to the documents, and of course the indictments related to the coup attempt and the insurrection.
By next December, he will be charged, and he will be mid-litigation on a number of criminal fronts.
I have a feeling there'll be celebration on all fronts here, but what's the impact of a Trump indictment on the American politic?
So it concerns me a lot. So there's the side of anybody who breaks the law needs to be held accountable. We know that. Whether you're president or a pool guy, you've got to be held accountable. I'm really concerned. His folks, we saw it on January 6th. They're going to riot in the streets. They're going to bring their brand of violence, hatred, and vitriol. But we, as a republic, have to stand stronger in the face of knowing that that's coming. We have to stand like frankly, so many protesters in the past who did nonviolent protests in the face of known violence coming their way. They stood up for it, and that's what I think we have to brace for as a country. Is these indictments, if they come, and I believe if there is one, there'll be more than one, will bring significant or could bring significant violence. It's how we respond as a republic.
Do you worry about him?
I mean, ultimately, I tend to think of Trump as Teflon Don in terms of being held accountable, but I think the indictments are coming. I don't know if anyone who is a true Trumpster cares, right? Even if he's found guilty of anything that they care.
Cares meaning it won't change their opinion.
It won't change their opinion. What I worry about are those moderate Republicans and those now independents who swing both ways and how they decide to view what happens to Trump.
Yeah, I don't agree with you at all. I think it'll increase the intensity of the people. You say the people don't care, meaning always committed to Trump. I think if their ferocity, their intensity of the embrace of Donald Trump is possible to go up, an indictment would be even further proof that, this is a witch hunt, the ultimate kind of witch hunt.
If they're dialed up to a 10, they'll get dialed up to a 20 if and when an indictment
So
comes.
what do we do? I mean, this notion that Steve's talking about, how we're going to take preventive action in advance. What does that even mean? Well, I should have been asking you, but I'll ask you first. Why don't you explain for him, if you don't mind what he meant?
Steve, which is a very, very dangerous
I thought I said it pretty well, but go ahead.
I think to the extent that we can, it's having law enforcement prepared for if and when that comes down. Obviously, there are concerns there because we've seen time and time again people within the ranks of law enforcement being sympathetic or even participating in the coup attempt on January 6th. So I think we need to really do some auditing of our law enforcement. And then I do think Steve is right. I know it sounds a little bit, unicorns and lollipops, but I think as private citizens, we really need to think about what we are willing to do to stand up for democracy and recognizing that different people have different privilege. When was the last time we stood up for democracy? Hang on, different people. We're going to talk about interrupting.
We are.
So let me interrupt you trying to interrupt me.
The previous what's later in the show.
I think we have to acknowledge that different people have different privilege when it comes to what we can do to stand up for democracy. But those of us with privilege need to be willing to do that.
And just on the point I was making about the energy around Trump and what will happen if he is indicted, I think when I think about that, I think about the many people who did not necessarily storm the Capitol, who are happy with Trump's policies, who were there on January 6th, who are showing up in public spaces across this country, but who don't necessarily subscribe to everything Trump does. Mm-hmm. And what happens with mobs is when there's a large crowd, everyone follows the crowd. So I think that if we could take out a major portion of that January 6th crowd and detach them from Trump, that smaller crowd won't have the voice that
Let me just add one thing, one note from Tribe and Gertner, who are pretty good lawyers. Despite people believing generally that if he's convicted of a felony, he can't run, not true. Only insurrectionist activity, meaning if he's convicted, documents at Mar-a-Lago, financial fraud, even if he goes to jail, he can run and serve from jail. She explained you better than you explained.
I will say, from a preparation perspective, not just being prepared for the protest, but and I think Merrick Garland's one of the best in the business, and he is preparing a case that we can convey to the American people in the crispest, clearest ways. And I think that how we prepare that and roll that out is going to make a difference for how the public.
My money's on the guy who prosecutes war criminals, Jack Smith, is the lead guy, even though Garland's got him.
Similar to how thoughtful the House of Representatives was in putting their case together, really telling a story and making it accessible. I am very hopeful, if not confident, that Merrick Garland will do the same.
The House of Representatives, by the way, were 135 people who voted to overturn the election, still serve, I should say. Let's move to the other side of the spectrum. Here's Joe Biden. I think it was last month, sort of, not quite making an announcement, but speaking.
Our intention is to run again. That's been our intention.
Is that a good thing, both for the Democratic Party, but more importantly for America? And I am talking about the octogenarian part of this deal.
Yeah, 100%.
Why?
First of all,
why are you smiling when you say that?
Because I am so excited for a Joe Biden re-election campaign, I can't stand it.
What if Trump is not running? Are you still excited about it?
I still think he is doing he will be judged by history and recent history or soon history as one of the most consequential presidents in our lifetime.
Legislative record's terrific.
Legislative record's terrific. He's the first president since FDR to gain seats in the Senate during his first midterms as president. Every time someone says Joe Biden can't do something, Joe Biden does it. And so I'm excited for his re-election because he'll have a chance. The bipartisan infrastructure bill will really be taking hold in people's lives. The Inflation Reduction Act will be taking hold in people's lives. By the way, the inflation will have been reduced in people's lives. Gas prices are lower now than they were a year ago. So all of this will be felt, and I feel he'll run for re-election and he'll win re-election.
Can you explain what he meant? No. Is your position the same on this?
Listen, I have...
You're not making eye contact. That's something.
Or smiling. What does that mean?
I've made no secret of being critical of President Biden at times when I don't think he's been progressive enough. I'm incredibly disappointed that we don't have paid family and medical leave. I know I'm sitting next to two healthcare professionals who undoubtedly understand how important that is. I wish he'd been more vocal about abortion earlier in his presidency. I wish he'd gone farther on canceling student debt. But I agree with Steve. His legislative record is impressive, even if it doesn't go as far as I would like it to. And there's no question if he runs for re-election, he has a strong track record to point to make the case that he should be re-elected.
You didn't say yes, though, that you think it's a good thing, did you?
I will absolutely support him if he runs for re-election.
She didn't say yes, that it was a good thing. How about you, Michael Kerry?
I think it's good for the party, and I do believe, like Steve, history will reflect that he was very successful in his first term. I think there's a lot of us, people of color, folks who've been looking for action around voting rights and policing in this country that thought he tried to mediate and make friends with the other side when, in fact, we needed somebody tougher. So I think there's a lot of disappointment. So we're friends of President Biden. We work, from an NAACP perspective, work with him. But I do believe that there was another strategy that he could have taken on these issues, and I wish he had really pushed that.
Well, it's particularly significant since I think most people would agree he is president because of people of color. Jim Clyburn in South Carolina made this man president of the United States. Can we go to another branch of government? Here's Sonia Sotomayor during the oral arguments on the Dobbs case, and obviously that's the case that overturned Roe v. Wade. Here she is.
Will this institution survive the stench that this creates in the public perception that the Constitution and its reading are just political acts?
Will the Supreme Court continue to repeal the 21st century? I mean, my sense is that's what their mission is, and there's nothing we can do to them.
That was the end game. And again, elections have consequences. Supreme Court justices make a huge difference in our lives, whether people realize it or not. And in fact, there is more to come. We think about affirmative action in this country and really the cases that are pending. There's a lot of losses we'll have under this Supreme Court. So we need to have a long game. And I think we need to start planning that now.
If you share that, I have to say, I am so, speaking of Tribe and Gertner, they were both on the Presidential Commission on the Supreme Court. They went in believing we should get rid of term limits, but then when they concluded needed a constitutional change, they're for expansion of the court. To say there's no momentum, even among Democrats, to do anything other than complain about these decisions, I think is an understatement.
I don't know that that's true. I mean, Ed Markey, Mondaire Jones, other folks have really been pushing hard on expanding the court, which I absolutely agree we have to do.
How many of their Democratic friends are joining them?
There is momentum. Is it the type of momentum that I'd like to see? Absolutely not. But it isn't some sort of static situation where there's no movement happening. I completely agree with Mike. This is going to happen. They are going to continue to politicize the court and roll this back. Don't listen to me. Listen to them. They put it in their own words. They put it in the decision around Dobbs. We aren't reading tea leaves here. We are literally just reading and listening to...
You mean Clarence Thomas talking about what else we should go after?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, birth control is in jeopardy. Thank goodness we protected marriage just this week.
That's Clarence Thomas talked about going after same-sex marriage and marriage equality and by extension, interracial marriage. What did we do? This past week, the President of the United States signed a bill codifying my right to marry my husband and people to marry that have been a right for Virginia v. Love since the 60s.
Well, it didn't quite go that far. It didn't create a right. It says that if you have a right in a state to do it, so it's got to be recognized.
But it's protected in a way it hasn't been
yes, that is totally true.
So my point on the momentum that the court has put into play is maybe not on adding justice to the court, taking away lifetime appointment. What it has done is put momentum into Generation Z, who went out and voted at record numbers. It put momentum into legislators to say, I mean, 12 Republican senators voted to codify same-sex marriage. When the Goodrich decision came down here in 2003, the gut reaction around the country was to ban gay marriage all across the country. 19 years later, we now have it codified in the United States of America, and that momentum is as important, if any, on changing.
Will abortion continue to be a rallying thing, as it was clearly in a ton of states, including red states in the midterms?
Absolutely, and to utter my 4 favorite words, I told you so. You know, I think there are a lot of us in the abortion activist space, including my friend Steve, who's on the national board at NAACP, as I continue to speak for Steve throughout this interview.
As long as you're saying good stuff, I'll just leave.
You know, there are a lot of us who have been activists on the ground for a long time who knew what the momentum was around the election, and we know that that is not changing anytime soon.
Let's come back to Massachusetts, and here's what one woman in particular had to say on the night of November 8th.
I want to say something to every little girl and every young LGBTQ person out there. I hope tonight shows you that you can be whoever you want to be.
It's a pretty great moment, I would argue. Now, in the spirit of full disclosure, you're on a transition team, I should say. I mean, women are in charge of everything, practically, in Massachusetts
now. It's a good thing.
Well, okay.
It is a good thing.
And how are we going to feel? Are we going to feel the difference, other than looking at the faces? Are we going to know the difference?
Well, one, I think we've left talent on the table, historically, right? Women, people of color who could bring new perspectives to climate change, to
first black woman statewide office holder,
maternity health, you know, all those things. And I jokingly say if the women ran stuff, we would have solved all these low birth weight babies and maternal health issues. So I think the Maura Healey being in this role means that we'll tackle some things that we've been resistant to tackling in the past. And I'm honored to be on their transition team to look at what's possible.
Do you buy that?
I absolutely do. And we see it. When women get elected, they tackle issues that typically are ignored. And I tell this story a lot, but when I worked for Governor Patrick, I think everyone's probably at this table been in the waiting area to go into the governor's office, and all of the portraits are up of past governors. And at the time, Governor Patrick wasn't up, but Jane Swift was up, along with Bill Weld and his armadillo and the denim.
I sort of like that portrait. It's pretty great.
Are they
denim
putting up
thing.
a portrait of you after you leave? Maybe you
Not
model it.
on Monday afternoon.
Yeah.
It's free, actually. But
Can't
go ahead.
wait. We'll
Yes,
be here for
thank
the
you.
unveiling. But watching these little kids, not just girls, but all the kids from the school groups who would come through and see Mike Dukakis and see Bill Weld and see Paul Solich stand in front of Jane Swift's portrait with their eyes like saucers, saying, it's a girl. I mean, you can't discount the policy stuff. Obviously matters, but you can't discount people seeing themselves in their leaders.
And shout out to Jane Swift. She's a good friend of mine, and I'm so proud.
Yeah,
she would appreciate this.
Can we go to the other side of the spectrum?
Sure.
Is anybody here? I mean, none of you are big time in the Republican Party. I think it's fair to say.
Not
Is it a
anymore.
problem that there is no Republican Party? That this is a
Not
total
for me,
one?
no.
I'm saying, is there really? You really don't have a problem with
No,
having
I
a
do.
total one-party
So
state?
no, actually I do, and I've said this before, and some of my Democratic friends didn't like it, some liked it. The best thing for the Democratic Party would be a stronger state Republican Party, because we, although showed incredible advances across Massachusetts this year and flipped one more statewide seat to a woman, but any team needs to be challenged in a real level, and in order to get better and get stronger. The Republican Party, all they do is tend to challenge each other here in Massachusetts. But our role in Massachusetts isn't just about being a great Democratic Party here. It's about taking what we've done as a Commonwealth throughout history, is taking our ideas and our passion, our energy, and exporting it all across the country and the world. That's what we do.
Okay, so I hate lightning rounds, but we're going to do a lightning round because we're short on time.
So fun.
We're going to talk about a couple of major newsmakers from 2022 and get your sense of how they're going to do in 20. I know it's cheesy, but we're going to do it anyway, so get with it, bro.
I'm ready.
Let's put this guy up first in a basketball outfit. Who's the first guy on? That would be Charlie Baker at Harvard. He's got a new job, we learned today. Charlie Baker in 2023.
A lucky man.
Why is that?
Look, he has worked hard for the Commonwealth for most of his career, and he deserves this job. It's going to be a challenging job at the NCAA.
Say what you said before the show.
He's going to be making an awful...
$2.9 million his predecessor.
Yeah.
Well, you have a look on your face. Go ahead.
I hope he does better fixing the NCAA than he did fixing the T.
But I'm bummed. Thank you very much. And how about you? In the spirit of full disclosure, you have a relationship to him too through COVID.
And I think when you have tough jobs like that, the other side of that should be something you enjoy that doesn't involve that much stress. I'm looking for tickets, so I want him to know I want to go to a Final Four, but I haven't made that call yet.
Okay, if there was a secret ballot, I mean this sincerely, and Maura Healey could say, I want to be the next governor of Massachusetts, or I want to be the head of the NCAA, how do you think she'd vote?
Secretly.
I think we all know what the answer is. Let's do something else on a much more serious note. Huge news and incredible news. Women in Iran, after the killing of a woman, women rose up at great personal risk, challenging the legitimacy of their government. What's going to happen there in 2023?
I hope more protests, more energy, more galvanizing around them. Iran just got kicked out of a critical UN committee. There's got to be more voices on women. Yeah. More voices joining those women from all around the world to support them.
How about you?
I mean, I have goosebumps when I see that video and think about what these women and the people who support them have done. I have to second what Steve said. We all have to join them with our voices, with our resources, with our political clout, because they are up against some not just horrific odds, but horrific consequences, and they need our support.
Michael Curry?
I always think about civil rights movement, the sacrifice of those folks. I think about Tiananmen Square with the folks who are holding signs with tanks coming at them, we shall overcome. It gives me chills as well. And I think courage will not skip this generation is what I think about when I see them.
That's great. We only have a couple of seconds for this. They're fighting for freedom. How about the guy who's fighting against freedom? Elon Musk in 2023, quickly.
I'm disturbed.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. Anybody?
I hope he just gets in a Tesla and drives off into the sunset.
Exactly. That's exactly what we
I was thinking one of his spaceships, but that's fine.
Yeah, I'll take that too.
Okay, so speaking of cheesy, we're going to end every one of these year ahead things that I do, and I've done quite a few here. What's the major, we get together next December, someplace, maybe on the radio, maybe somewhere else on TV, whatever. And what was the big story of 2023?
So I think just as there was a big economic story this year, I think it's going to be an economic story in 23, but turning around. And a close second with that is how Gen Z has really revitalized engagement in our society.
How about you?
Two things. I hate saying this, but I think the big story of 2023 is the 2024 presidential elections. And the second story is how Massachusetts politics fares without Jim Braude on TV almost every night.
I like
and
that
how about
one.
you?
Wow.
Can't duplicate.
I'm going to echo that one. I would say still COVID. I'd say I have to think about the resilience we showed, the collaborations we showed, how we came together as communities here, particularly here in Massachusetts. We ranked high because of people fighting for equity, fighting for the vulnerable communities. I think that's still the story of 2022, and I'm proud of the work Steve and I and so many other health centers across the state have done to be part of that story.
How about Trump drops out of race, leaves Melania, elopes with Carrie Lake? Don't you? I think that. No,
If that's
Michael
the story,
Carey,
I'm buying.
it's great to have you here on this night. Jesse and Mermell,
Thanks for
thank you
everything,
so
Jim.
much.
Thank
Steve
you, Jim.
Kerrigan, I really
Appreciate it. Thank
appreciate
you.
it.